Hi, Daring Dragons. This is Miss Amy from Patterson Library coming to you with our Week 1 stories. Today's stories are all about fairy tale nutrition. But before we talk about that, I'm going to share a couple of jokes with you. What do you get when a giant walks through your garden? What do you think? I'll tell you the answer. Squash! And here's another. What do you get when you cross a giant with a skunk? Well, that one's pretty easy. A big stink. I'll bet you guessed that one. Well, I wonder if any of you have a garden. I know some of my library friends do. And I wonder what you've planted in it. Do you know you may have something magical growing in your garden? Or at least you can imagine that it's magical. All summer we're going to be doing stories and activities about Imagine Your Story. So we're going to use our imagination a lot. Today, I'll share some stories and activities related to food and fairy tales and folk tales and things you might have growing in your garden. In Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, you may remember that there is a poison apple. In the book, The Princess and the Pea, you all know what the vegetable is, that tiny little pea that makes the princess not be able to sleep. In a great folk tale that's been told many different ways, stone soup becomes a wonderful feast for everyone in the village. I'll be sharing that story with you later. Another great story is the great big enormous turnip. The pictures are by Helen Oxenberry, and the story is by Alexei Tolstoy. Most of these fairy tales and folk tales have been told for years and years in many different ways. So instead of a particular author, they are retold by authors often. And the first story we're going to enjoy today is Jack and the Beanstalk. So sit back and relax and enjoy this story, retold by Susan Pearson and illustrated by James Warhola. Here at Patterson Library, we have several versions of Jack and the Beanstalk. So if you'd like to read a different version, you can check one out. Once upon a time, a widow lived in the country with her only son named Jack and their cow named Milky White. They were very poor. All they had to live on was the milk the cow gave, which Jack took to market and sold. But one morning, Milky White gave no milk. "Oh, what shall we do?" cried the widow, wringing her hands. "Cheer up, mother," said Jack. "I'll take Milky White to market and sell her." And he took the cow by her halter and started off. "Remember, Jack, she's all we have," his mother called after him. "Be sure you get a good price for her." Jack hadn't gone far when he met a funny-looking old man. "Good morning, Jack," said the old man, "and where are you off to in a hurry?" "Good morning to you too, sir," said Jack, wondering how the old man knew his name. "I am on my way to market to sell Milky White." At that, the old man began to laugh. "That's a tall job for a short fellow," he said. "Why, I'll bet you don't even know how many beans makes 5. "2 in each hand and 1 in my mouth," said Jack, sharp as a needle. "Right you are," said the old man, and he reached into his pocket and pulled out 5 beans. "Since you are so smart, I'll make you a deal. You give me Milky White, and I'll give you these beans." "What?" cried Jack. "My beautiful cow for 5 ordinary beans?" "Not ordinary beans," said the old man. He held out his hand. "These are magic beans, Jack. Plant them in the ground tonight, and by morning you will have grown all the way up to the sky, a huge beanstalk." "Right up to the sky?" asked Jack, amazed. "You have my word on it," said the old man. "If they don't, you can have your cow back again." "Well," said Jack. The old man closed his hand around the beans. "Perhaps you're not interested. Perhaps you're not the smart boy I took you for. Well, no matter." And he put the beans back into his pocket. "No, wait," cried Jack. "I'll do it." And quick as a wink, the swap was made. When Jack got home, his mother was waiting for him. "Back already?" she said. "You must have found an eager buyer. How much money did you get?" "You'll never guess, mother," said Jack. £5, £10, 15, 20? "I knew you'd never guess," said Jack. "Look!" He held out his hand. "We'll plant these in the ground tonight, and in the morning—" "Beans?" cried his mother. "5 moldy beans for our good cow? Oh, Jack, you've been swindled. What good are beans that we can't even eat?" And she snatched them from Jack's hand and threw them out the window. All this made Jack feel so miserable that he went straight to bed without his supper. The next morning when Jack woke up, his room looked very odd. Instead of sunlight streaming in, strange shadows darted about the walls. Jack jumped out of his bed and ran to the window. There, outside, was a giant beanstalk. So the old man had told the truth after all. Jack pulled on his clothes and ran outside. Up, 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 the beanstalk grew through the clouds like a ladder to the sky. Jack wondered what magic might be at the top. There was only one way to find out, so Jack began to climb. Up he went, above his cottage, above the treetops, until they seemed like tiny specks. Soon he could see the whole countryside, but still he climbed and climbed until at last he reached the top. A long road stretched before him into the distance. There was nothing to do but follow the road. On and on he went till he reached the great house. By that time, he was so hungry, he was so happy to see a tall woman standing on the doorstep, stirring something in a great black pot. "Good morning, ma'am," said Jack. "Do you think you could give me some breakfast, please?" "Breakfast?" cried the tall woman. "Well, if it's breakfast you want, it's breakfast you'll be. My husband is an ogre, and there's nothing he likes better than grilled boy on toast. You'd better be off before he comes home." "Oh, please, ma'am," begged Jack, "give me something to eat first. That I have had nothing to eat since yesterday morning. I may as well be grilled as die of hunger." So the ogre's wife, who was not altogether bad, took Jack into the kitchen and gave him some bread and milk. But Jack had just begun to eat when thump, 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 the whole house began to shake. The ogre was coming. "Oh dear," said the ogre's wife, "what shall I do with you? Quick, quick, hide in here." She pushed Jack into the huge oven just in time. The ogre was enormous. 3 sheep were tied to his belt, and he carried a club the size of a small tree. Pausing in the doorway, he sniffed the air. "What's this I smell?" he answered. And he began to prowl around the kitchen, muttering to himself. Now you may know this part of the story, so feel free to say it from home with me. "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he live or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." "Nonsense, dear," said his wife. "You smell the bones of that boy you ate for supper yesterday. I'm boiling them down for soup. Now give me those sheep so I can start dinner while you eat your breakfast." So the ogre sat down to the breakfast of 5 meat pies, 3 roast turkeys, 10 pounds of fried potatoes, 8 dozen eggs, and a few gallons of hot chocolate. And when he had finished, he fetched 3 bags of gold pieces from a big chest and sat down to count them. All that warm milk must have caught up with him, though, for soon his head was nodding, and not long after he was fast asleep. When the ogre's snores sounded like a summer thunderstorm, Jack knew it was safe to come out of the oven. The ogre's wife was in the pantry. Jack tiptoed past the ogre, snatched up one of the bags of gold, and ran off with it over his shoulder. When he reached the beanstalk, he threw the bags down into his own backyard and then climbed down after it. Jack and his mother lived well for some time on that bag of gold, but at last they came to the end of it, and Jack made up his mind to try his luck again. So one fine morning he got up early and climbed up through the clouds as he had before. He followed the road to the great house, and there, sure enough, standing on the doorstep was the great tall woman. "Good morning, Jack." "Good morning, ma'am," said Jack. "Do you think you could give me some breakfast?" "Go away," said the ogre's wife crossly. "The last time a boy came, he made off with a bag of gold. Why, you might be that very same boy. You all look the same to me." "I believe I heard about that boy," said Jack. "I'd tell you if I weren't too hungry to say another word." The ogre's wife was so curious, she took Jack into the kitchen and fed him. But again, thump, 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 the ogre came home, and again she pushed Jack into the oven. This time the ogre carried 3 calves on his belt. "For dinner," he said. "I haven't caught a boy in days." "But what's that smell? You must have found me a boy for breakfast." "Wishful thinking," said the wife. "There's no boy here." But the ogre once again prowled around the kitchen, muttering, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he live or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." At last he gave up and sat down to a breakfast of 16 melons, 2 roast pigs, 3 gallons of oatmeal, 15 mince pies, and hot chocolate. When he was finished, he called out, "Wife, bring me my magic hen." So the ogre's wife brought in a small black hen that she placed in front of the ogre. "Lay," said the ogre, and at once it laid a golden egg. "Lay," he said again, and there was another beautiful shining golden egg. The ogre amused himself in this way for some time, but finally his head began to nod. When his snores sounded like the ocean beating against a rocky shore, Jack knew it was safe to leave. Carefully, he tipped over to the hen, caught it by the leg, and was off. But just as he was going out the door, the hen gave a cackle, which woke the ogre. "Wife," Jack heard him roar, "what have you done with my magic hen?" But that's all Jack heard, for he was running like lightning to the beanstalk. Down he climbed faster than a falling bean to show his mother the magic hen. "Lay, please," he told it, and sure enough, it laid a golden egg every time Jack asked. For some time, Jack and his mother lived very comfortably on the golden eggs laid by the magic hen. But then one day, the hen stopped laying. What could be wrong with her, Jack's mother wondered. Only one way to find out, Jack said, and up the beanstalk he went again. This time he knew better than to ask for breakfast. Instead, he hid in the bushes, and the ogre's wife came out to fetch some water. And then he slipped into the kitchen and hid inside a copper pot. He hadn't been there long when thump, 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 he heard the ogre coming. Jack peeked out from beneath the lid. This time, the ogre carried 3 fat oxen. He had barely tossed them on the counter when he began to shout, "I smell him, wife, I smell him. I know there's a boy here somewhere." "Well, if there is," said the wife, "you can be sure it's that good-for-nothing boy who stole your gold and your magic hen. No doubt he's back for more, and he's probably hiding in the oven." But Jack wasn't there, only several pork roasts cooking and sizzling. The ogre's wife laughed. "How forgetful I am. You smell the boy we had last night for dinner." So the giant sat down to eat his breakfast, but every now and then he would mutter, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman." Then he'd go search around the cupboards and behind the doors, but luckily for Jack, he never looked in the copper pot. When he had finished his meal of 14 smoked salmon, 55 mutton chops, a small mountain of mush, and hot chocolate, of course, he called out, "Wife, bring me my golden harp." His wife placed a little harp before him on the table, then went upstairs to make the beds. The ogre leaned back in his chair. "Sing," he said, and the little harp began to sing a beautiful song, very sweetly, one after another, and the ogre fell fast asleep. When the ogre's snores sounded like a dozen roaring dragons, Jack knew it was safe to leave the copper pot. Silently, he tiptoed to the table, grabbed the harp, and raced out the door. But before he'd even left the yard, the golden harp cried out, "Master, master!" And the ogre awoke just in time to see Jack disappearing with his harp. "This is the last straw," the ogre roared, and he leaped to his feet. "I'll have you for my dinner tonight, boy." And he ran out the door after Jack. Jack ran like the wind and never stopped, even once, to look back over his shoulder. But he could hear the ogre gaining on him, closer, closer, and closer, until Jack could feel ogre breath on his neck. By then he had reached the beanstalk. Jack leaped onto it and started down. He could see the ogre up above, gingerly fingering the beanstalk, uncertain whether it would hold him. This put Jack ahead again, and he climbed all the harder. He was just beginning to feel safe when the little harp called out once more, "Master, master!" And at that, the ogre made up his mind. Jack felt the beanstalk lurch and shudder and knew the ogre was following him. "Mother, mother!" Jack yelled. "Quick, bring me my axe!" So when Jack jumped off the beanstalk, his mother was right there, ready with the axe. Above them, the ogre's legs were just coming through the clouds. Jack seized the axe and swung it as hard as he could into the beanstalk. A second blow and the beanstalk quivered. A third, and Jack had chopped it clean in two. The ogre roared one last time as he crashed to the ground, and the beanstalk came tumbling after. Then Jack showed his mother the golden harp, which played more sweetly now than ever before. Hearing it, the little black hen tilted her head and cackled twice and laid a golden egg without even being asked. And after that, Jack and his mother were never short of music or of golden eggs or of amazing stories to tell their friends about a rich ogre's widow who lives high above the clouds. Now, we're going to do a little science experiment that you may want to try at home. I tried this once with a different kind of bean, so we're going to hope it works with these beans. But did you know that you can make beans dance? Here's how you do it. You need a glass jar or cup so that you can see through it. You need some kind of clear soda. can be Sprite or Sierra Mix or just Topps brand clear pop. And you need to put it in your cup. After you put it in, we'll drop in some magic beans and see if we can see them dance. So if you have beans in the cupboard at home, they need to be the dried kind, or if you're growing beans in the garden, maybe you can dry some. And I'm going to drop a couple in and see what happens. Ooh, they're making little fizzies. Oh, there they go. Watch. There goes one. There goes another. And a couple more. Your beans will dance up and down. And if you take a spoon or gently stir it around, they'll even dance more. I'll bet you didn't know that you might have magic beans growing in your garden. And there's our dancing beans. I'll send some directions in your take-home bag, which you'll be getting next Wednesday. Not this Wednesday, but the following week. On week 2 and 4, we're going to send home some bags with directions to our experiments and some book lists and some other fun word searches, mazes, and things that you might enjoy doing. So I'm going to put a few more beans in there and let them keep dancing, and then I'll tell another story. Now the Jack of the Beanstalk story was kind of long, and this one I'm actually just going to tell without a book. This story is called Stone Soup. We have 2 versions of it, and maybe even more here at the library. So the way I tell it might not be exactly the way that it's told in one of the books. When you check out the books, you can see if they're different or the same. And here's a short version of Stone Soup. Once upon a time, there was a village. The village was a nice place to live, except that nobody who lived in the village wanted to share. One day, some visitors came to town. "Hello," they said. "Does anyone have some food? We've been walking and walking and walking. We are hungry and tired. Will anybody here share some food?" Well, of course, they were in the wrong village. The villagers all said quickly they did not have enough to share. They were sorry, but no sharing here. "Okay," said the villagers, said the hikers. "We will make some stone soup for everyone here." Well, the villagers wondered what that was all about. So the visitors took a large pot and they found a nice smooth rock. They polished the rock until it shone and they put it into the pot. They added water and began to stir. After a while, one of the visitors said, "This is great stone soup, but it would be a little better if I had a little bit of cabbage to add to it." Well, the villagers had gathered around, and one of the men said, "I might have a little bit of cabbage that you can use." So he ran home and brought some cabbage leaves, which the visitors added to the pot. They kept stirring and stirring. And then the other visitors said, "You know, one time I made stone soup and it was delicious. And then when I added a carrot, it was even better." Well, one of the women had a good store of carrots from her garden. So she ran home and she brought a carrot, which the visitors added to the pot. The stone soup was beginning to smell very delicious. You know, this would be even more scrumptious if I had a little bit of corn to put in it, said the visitor. And a little boy ran out to the cornfield and picked some ears of corn, which he brought, and the visitors added it to their pot. Oh, this is smelling so good. If only we had a few beans to add to the pot. Now, luckily, I had saved a few beans from my science experiment, and so I brought them to the visitors, and they added them to the pot. Well, the soup cooked and cooked. All the villagers had gathered around to see how good this stone soup could possibly be. Finally, it was ready. The visitors dished up bowls of soup for all of the villagers who were gathered around. and they all agreed it was the best stone soup they had ever tasted. And do you know, something else happened that day in the village? When visitors came to visit, now all the people in the village were quick to share after they learned a lesson about a little bit of sharing that made great stone soup for everyone there. You could make stone soup at home. If you have a garden or just have some vegetables in your refrigerator, you could get a nice stone, and in Westfield a lot of people are gathering stones. Make sure you wash it off with some soap and rinse it well before you make your stone soup. And then have your parents help you get a big pot, and you could chop up whatever vegetables are growing in your garden or whatever vegetables you have at home. You might want to add a little salt and anything you can find to make delicious home stone soup. So, I think I'm just going to show you the last book quickly. This is called The Great Big Enormous Turnip. There's another book in Patterson Library about a giant carrot, and they're very similar. So you may want to check this book out and read it. And as you may remember about these books if you've seen them or heard the tale before, in this book it's an old man who plants a turnip. He pats it down with dirt. He makes sure it has water. And in the book about the giant carrot, it's a little boy who plants a tiny carrot seed. And the turnip grew up sweet and strong and enormous. And one day the man tried to pull his turnip. He pulled and pulled but couldn't pull it up. So he asked for help. The old woman comes. They can't pull it. Their granddaughter comes, but even with all three, they can't pull it. Their dog comes. The cat comes. And finally, the cat called the mouse. The mouse pulled the cat pulled the dog pulled the granddaughter pulled the old woman, and the old woman pulled the old man. The old man pulled the turnip. They pulled and pulled again, and at last, the turnip came up. Oh, what a feast they will have. Now, I didn't read all the words, you noticed, so some of you may want to check this book out. Anytime you're reading, keep track of how many minutes you're reading, and on our Read Squared app, which you've registered for or should register for, it's on our webpage and Facebook pages, you can put in how many minutes it takes you to read a book. When you get to 100 minutes, a mission will open up, and when you get to 300 minutes, 600 minutes, and 900 minutes, and you put them into the computer, you get prizes at each level. We're also going to send home little bags that I mentioned every couple of weeks with some little prizes and sheets about science and books in it. And we're also going to have our special events every Monday at 11:15. I hope you got to enjoy the first one, the Dragon Show, on Monday. And I'll be doing raffles starting next Monday. So if you complete the mission, after you read your stories, you'll be able to get to a mission. When you complete the mission each week, you'll be in the raffle drawing for some wonderful prizes. I'll be talking to you about that on a separate Facebook Live event on Mondays. So thank you so much for coming and listening to stories with me today. Keep on reading, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.